Hello, and welcome to another episode of Enter the Minds of Nadine and Vera podcast.
Hello. How are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
Peachy King.
Oh, there go your words again, Pitchy King.
I didn't say partly cloudy.
With a cloud of sunshine. Let's talk about your new word, your new phrase you learned, out of pocket.
Oh, let me tell you, I think that's a cool word. But if you hadn't explained it to me, I would have thought it was a compliment.
Yeah, Tyrese Halliburton said that his dad was, what exactly did he say, Mom?
He said, the commentator asked him what he was going to do after the game, if he was going to go home with his dad or, celebrate with his dad. He said, my dad is going home because his jeans are out of pocket.
And then I had to explain to you what out of pocket meant.
Then I saw him later the next day on TikTok. Yeah, they were out of pocket.
Yeah, exactly.
So now I'm going around and I'm seeing things and I'm like, Tanya, is that out of pocket?
I knew she was going to start using the phrases. So, but anyway, so that was kind of cool and funny when you said Peachy King, because that's been your phrase since I've known you.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, today I just wanted to we're just going to just chit chat. And I wanted to ask Mom about, Mom, do you think you had an interesting life so far?
I had a very interesting life, full life.
I asked that question because I've been listening to Tina Knowles' audiobook, which is Beyonce's mom. And, I know a lot of people think that Beyonce's family is interesting because of her, but her mom had a very interesting childhood. Yeah, even before Beyonce was born, she had a very intriguing, interesting life. And so that just made me think of, asking you that question.
Yeah. For example, as a little girl, my grandparents raised me in Pelham, Georgia, which is about 45 minutes from Tallahassee. So moving to Tallahassee retiring here was like moving home because there's nothing in Pelham, Georgia. Anyway, we lived in town till I was 10. And that part of my life is very interesting. I think I mentioned how we didn't really have electricity. We had a well outside the back door. My grandmother cooked on a wooden stove with the little wooden chips. Mm-hmm. She had the wash tub and the washboard, and we had an outhouse. But, you don't miss what you don't have. I was a happy kid. So then we moved to our brand new house in the country, mm-hmm. and it was sky blue, and I helped dig the foundation.
That's cool.
I don't know if I put more dirt in or out, but I was there. But anyway, my grandparents treated me like a princess. I had everything. I was raised like an only child, had my own room with the lace bedspread and matching curtains and white vanity dresser, literally. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, very good. And, of course, we went to church all the time, so I was decked out. I had school clothes, play clothes, and church clothes.
So what made you decide to go to the military after you graduated high school?
As I said, Pelham, Georgia, very small, so I knew I had to leave. It was nothing there for me. I joined the military like many people do because I wanted to have eventually the opportunity to go to college. And, my godparents would have helped me, but they had 12 kids. They didn't need to have one more to try to help through college. My dad offered for me to come to Tampa. What would that have been? I would have been close to FAMU, or not FAMU.
I can't think of it.
Florida, anyway, close to Tampa. And then my mom wanted me to come because I actually went to Upward Bound at Florida Memorial College mm-hmm. as a teenager. So the military was a quick way for me to be on my own, but not completely. I didn't have to just step out and figure out how I was going to live or eat or whatever. The military took care of that. So.
I know that's what you told me when I joined the Air Force, that you was okay with me joining the Air Force because you knew that I was going to be taken care of, but yet still have accountability. I wasn't going to be completely on my own. So I think that's the only reason why you allowed me to go to the Air Force. But I want to ask, was there anything else you wanted to do when you were younger growing up that you dreamed of being?
Um, I did a lot of writing
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of singing.
Mm-hmm.
But I think I was always drawn to the writing, the organization. So I became an administrator, of course, later in my military career. My first job was military intelligence, but still to a certain extent, you still administratively doing things. So um, I've always been able to multitask. So yeah, the military will let you grow as fast as you want to grow.
So where was your basic training at?
Fort Jackson,
Which is what state?
South Carolina,
Okay.
Tank Hill.
So when you first went to basic training, was it like a culture shock?
It was a culture shock when I got off the bus before I even got to my training site.
Mm-hmm.
They threw us all in a room. We had been up all night, because they drove us by bus from Atlanta. First, I had to get to Atlanta, of course. We was in the Peachtree, nice little room. Reality hadn't hit.
Mm-hmm.
They put us on the bus, and we arrived about 1, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, like at the processing center, I want to say. And I'm leaning up against the wall because I'm tired. And then this person was yelling and screaming, talking about, "Get off that wall, you maggot." I looked at him like, this person done lost their mind. Anyway, long story short, next day the drill sergeant came to pick up their platoon. And I was crying when he first met me because they was rushing us. I was trying to get my clothes because I had trying to wash. My clothes were still wet. Needless to say, they rotted over the 6 week. They didn't survive, but I was just crying because it's like, oh my goodness, what have I gotten into? But I was doing what I was told to do. And they put us on a cattle truck. The kind where the cows be on? It was a cattle truck.
That's old school there.
Yes, it was.
Okay. My experience, I think, why do they do that? Why do they make you get there in the middle of the night just to see your reaction and how you're going to handle stress from the get-go? Because that kind of happened to me as well.
What it is, Tanya, they want to break you down. They want you to forget about the life you lived, and they want to shock you,
Mm-hmm.
and they want to build you back up. But they always start by making you they break you down. They try to clear your brain, brainwash.
I don't know. I don't think you gave me any pointers or anything about basic training, but I wasn't shocked. Like, to me, we got there and these girls are just laughing and chit chatting like it was going to be a party. I knew to be quiet. I knew to stay silent and just, wait for them to come out and greet us. And,
I did too. I gave you those tips.
I just seemed like even if I was stressing on the inside, you couldn't tell on the outside I was cool, come and collect. And, it wasn't a shock to me, maybe because we are like a big military family.
You remember the lady she was my boss at the time? Both you and I and Miss Hatcliffe would go to Fort Leavenworth to the gym.
Yeah.
After work.
Mm-hmm, I remember that.
And she was a sergeant major on the military side. And I was a warrant officer, whatever. And the tips that we gave you was, do what you're told, no more, no less.
Mm-hmm.
And you'll survive.
Mm-hmm.
And that was your tips. And you did it.
And then I just think along the way, kind of being smart, like, what is it called when you have to do the 2-hour, like night shift watch? I was smart enough to either do the first shift or the last shift if they asked for volunteers, because the last shift is like, okay, I'm already dressed for the day. So when they did, what is it, Reveille, or, woke us up at, I don't know,
5:30, 4:45.
Depending on what time they woke us up, I'm already dressed, I'm already ready. All I have to do is like maybe go brush my teeth, or you do the first shift so that way you can sleep longer. So I think that's a smart tip of.
Yeah.
I don't know if you gave that to me or if I just figured it out.
You figured it out, but that is the worst shift was the third shift or whatever. They wake you up in the middle of your sleep, but you do have maybe 2 hours left. You can sleep more, but that was the worst, first and last.
And night shift in a dorm, like we're watching this door that we can't go out of. Like it wasn't. I mean, I understand why they
They
had a
call it fire guard. They
fire
didn't.
guard
I guess
duty.
they didn't have fire alarms. What was their problem?
I don't know.
But the fire guard person was the one to make sure if something broke out, whether it was a fire or anything, that you would warn everybody, get them out safely, and wake up the drill sergeant.
And we always did it in pairs.
Well, not the drill sergeant, but yeah.
So that was kind of cool.
Yeah.
So what was your first, so you had basic training, and then where was your training, like your tech school or your AIT training?
My AIT was at, it's called Fort Devon, Massachusetts, which was about 45 miles, I want to say, from this little small Massachusetts town called Air, outside of there. But really, that was a shock more than basic because I graduated and was sent to my AIT in August. When we left Fort Jackson, they were hosing us down to keep us cool, to keep us from being heat casualties.
Mm-hmm.
I stepped off that plane in Boston, Massachusetts, and like to froze my butt off. It was freezing in August.
Right.
Then nobody told me I'm a little private. Hadn't really traveled anywhere. The goodness of another soldier that was experienced is why I figured out where to go. No one told me when you get to Boston, you got to catch a bus from the airport. Well, they'll have someone to take you from the airport to the first station. But no one told me I had to do that, what bus to catch to be transported to my AIT. It was a trip.
So that was a culture shock to you as well.
It was cold.
You had to figure it out.
Yes.
And you joined the military at 18.
Yes.
Right. So do you feel like you grew up in a bubble? Because I'm assuming growing up in Pelham, Georgia, I'm sure you went to vacations on in Florida, Georgia, but you did you go on vacations anywhere outside of Georgia, Florida?
Oh, I went on vacation. I was supposed to do that?
I'm just asking. Probably not, right?
It's just like you and Terry told me. Granddaddy would take me with him when he would go visit my mom in Miami or my uncle Shorty in Fort Lauderdale. But
Right.
Was that really a vacation, or was we were visiting family?
Yes, we told you that visiting family is not vacation.
It was not a vacation, but I grew up in a bubble. I was protected, surprisingly, from quite a bit. I was born in 1960, and quite a bit was going on around me, and I did not have a clue. So when I joined the military, I was raw. I didn't know anything. I was so naive.
Okay, so your AIT was in Massachusetts. So how did you get into Morse code?
Okay, so when we got to the receptionist station, you know how they give you the test, right?
I didn't get the Morse code test.
No, listen. They give you the military test to join to see what your aptitude is.
The ASVAB?
ASVAB.
Mm-hmm.
And because my score, and surprisingly, my classmate score was high, they asked us, what job do you want? Didn't have a clue. I said, I want the best job the military got.
Cocky.
Right? And that they could have made me a food service soldier. I wouldn't have known.
Military police.
I just wanted the best. So they say, well, we want to give you a test. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So they gave us the Morse code test, and I'll never forget it. I have excellent hearing, thank goodness. Otherwise, I would have failed it because my classmate, when she got thrown off, the test was da-da, 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 da-da. And you had to write down or type whatever, what letter you heard. She started laughing and talking, and I'm still taking the test. And I was able to block her enough where I could hear what the letters were, and I scored very high.
And so that's how you got stationed in Korea?
Well, that's another story. Naive. So then they asked me, they said, well, you have an excellent score. We're going to put you military intelligent. Where would you like to be stationed?
So they asked.
They asked me.
What were your choices?
I said, well, my god sister is Vietnamese, And since you're not sending anyone to Vietnam, they offered me Japan. They offered me Germany. They offered me Korea. And I said, instead of Japan, I think I want to go to Korea because it might be close to where Lily was born. I'm like, naive.
Yeah, you didn't know better.
Didn't know any better.
But if you could have do it again, would you have chosen Germany?
I would have chose Japan because that's the one place I've never been, I guess. I don't know.
Oh, Japan, I meant, yeah.
I've never been to Japan.
Well, I know when I did my
Okinawa.
choices, I wanted to go to Germany because just you telling me your stories of how beautiful Germany was, and you know, like the castles, and I didn't realize until we went to Germany in 2019.
I was telling the truth, huh?
You were really telling the truth. The greenest grass, the greenest trees. It was
And the fruit was big and juicy.
It's just so beautiful in Germany.
God's country.
And we were able to go to some castles and just wow. Okay, so I didn't know that was an option, and you chose Korea.
Mm-hmm.
So when you first got to Korea, back in what 1980, right?
I joined in 79. I went to AIT. It was a 6-month AIT, which I graduated 4 months early because I was just that good. They had, your daddy was too. They had this system where you had to pass certain levels a week, and I would pass 2 or 3. I never had to go to class on Friday because I would be just that up. It's just something about Morse code. That was my thing. And I could sleep through it because I got called into the office one day, and I go in there, and the instructor say, well, I call you in here to chew you out, but you passed the level. I say, oh, my eyes be just closed. But I was straight up asleep. But I had gotten to the point where my fingers knew the pulse of the whatever I was listening to.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm. And so anyway, then I got held back a couple of weeks because I was too small. I had an eating problem, so I couldn't get transferred until I gained weight. Did you know you could be put on they call it the weight control program for being underweight? Yes.
Okay, didn't know that.
Yes.
Okay, so you had to gain some weight.
Mm-hmm.
You did.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so when you got to Korea, when you stepped off the plane, when you first saw Korea in its whole, did you think that it was beautiful, or was it like a war zone? Like how would you describe Korea?
It stunk.
How did it smell? What did it smell like?
Horrible. To the point where most people, when they first get in country, they get sick for about 2 weeks because they use maneuver for their feels.
Okay.
Yeah, that kind of stunk. Korea, I don't regret going to Korea. I met your daddy in Korea. And it had a lot of cheap, shopping. Korea wasn't bad. It was just an experience. I was excited to be there, actually. But I'm just saying, in hindsight, I should have chose Japan. But Korea was great.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, Korea happened, and then got pregnant with me, and you got stationed in Tacoma, Washington, where you had me, correct?
Fort Lewis, Washington. Yep.
Fort Lewis. Okay. And I don't want to, I guess you don't have to tell me about each step, but like, I know you've been stationed in a lot of places. Like, what was your best station that you've ever been, your favorite base?
As a soldier or as a spouse?
Either.
Okay, Hawaii.
Okay.
And San Antonio was my second runner-up that I loved. But Hawaii was paradise.
Mm-hmm. Especially a kid coming from Pelham, Georgia, right?
It was paradise. But it was too expensive to come flying home to go visit people that you're going to, I ain't going to say what I was thinking. And then you spend all that money. So every year we would save money. And then the first year, instead of coming home on vacation, Terry say, we need a new car, don't we? I said, yep. So we got a new car. The next year was something else because for the 4 of us to fly home was outrageous. I fly home for 10 days, the money gone, but we really needed something else that was better for the family. But other than that, it was paradise.
So let's back up. So you was active duty.
No,
You got wait. So when you first joined, you was active duty, correct?
right.
And then you got married, and then you became reserve.
What happened was when I got pregnant with you,
Mhm.
I got married, right? Me and Terry. And when it was time to send us to a new duty station, now we married. We got you. They were going to send me to Germany and send him to Hawaii.
Mm.
So I made the choice because at that time, I don't know if it's still true. If you're pregnant, you could say, I want to get out on the basis that a medical discharge for that. And that's what I got off active duty.
Medical discharge.
Yeah. And then later, you know, I was a spouse in Hawaii and I was a spouse in San Antonio, but I joined the reserve. I didn't have a break in the service. Because, you know, like if you stay on duty 4 years, you still obligated 6.
When you get out.
You
Yeah.
still, right.
Mhm.
So I joined the Army Reserve in San Antonio, 5th Infantry Division, you know, and then I never had a break in service. So from there, I did 6-month tours where you
Mm-hmm.
be on duty for 6 months and, you know, stuff like that.
Okay. So as a military, you know, on the military side, what was your favorite place that you've been? You said as a spouse, it was Hawaii, but on the military side, you've been a lot of places. What's your favorite place that you've been stationed or gone for 6 months or been on duty?
I would have to say Germany because Germany was a central point. If you were in Germany, we were an hour from France. You could catch a plane as if it was a bus to Romania, to we called a bus to London.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I went to, can't even think of all the places I went to, but you can, just like Kayla did her months tour and all the places she went, like Athens, Belgium, all that. Germany is the central point, and from there, you can go anywhere. Remember, we drove from where I was stationed in Germany to Paris.
Which was about a 5-hour drive.
And then we could have drove another, hour and a half, maybe 2. We would have been in London.
Okay.
But we didn't go to London. And then Terry and, you know, them, they took a little hop to Italy. So Germany will have to be mine. And what a way to end your career, wasn't it? That was an awesome way for them to allow me to be in Germany, get to visit Europe at the end of my military career.
And it was pretty cool that we got to see Germany too before you got out the military. So great family trip, vacation.
All you saw was Germany?
We saw Germany and Paris. It was wonderful. The whole trip was not enough time. It was perfect.
But you were there for 9 days. Think about it. But it just went so fast.
Yeah. I think we were there 10 days.
Yeah, well, I was saying.
Not including travel.
I was saying not including travel. You were there 9 days.
Mm-hmm.
And look, remember we had a hiccup. No one told me that I could only get X amount of people on base at one time. Mm-hmm. But my little staff members, they hooked us up, didn't they?
I don't know if you're supposed to say that, but
it's okay.
You're out the military now, huh?
No, it was okay.
But I was
escorted
veteran,
you guys
so I think I would have been fine.
Yeah, if you had your card, did you have your ID card?
Probably not then.
Yeah. It was like 4 people on. If we hadn't had extra guests, we would have been fine.
Now, I liked Paris, but I do remember looking at the Eiffel Tower and I was like, this is it? I felt kind of bad just thinking, you know, it's just the Eiffel Tower, it's just a building. Like I didn't get that wow factor. You know, like when I look out in nature, you look at a mountain, a beach, you're like, wow, this is beautiful.
It was also cold and very windy.
It was very windy when we went to the Eiffel Tower.
When we went to the top, I just stayed on the inside. I'm like, I'm not going to get blown off this.
But you had seen it before, of course. But that was my first time seeing it.
That was my first time.
I forgot.
Paris, that was the first time when I took you guys.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay, you had been in Italy before. And okay, in Germany before.
But I was impressed with the Versailles and what was the other museum?
The Louvre.
The Louvre.
And the Palace of Versailles. Both were humongous.
Yes.
And
We went to the
We kept
Love.
walking and walking and walking and walking, and it was still too big. And finally, you're just over it. But it's so beautiful.
I was afraid though when we were driving. Thank goodness, thank God Terry Jr. was driving because they had people on motorcycles that was cutting in and out of traffic. They'll get ran over in America if they
It was
did
like
that.
you just have to go for it and just hope for the best.
And just driving down there, I guess I was driving like a little old lady, and Terry Jr. took over.
Mm-hmm.
But I was still afraid.
Mm-hmm.
But it was beautiful.
Okay, so let's back up. So Germany, Paris, beautiful. Okay, being in the military and having 2 young kids. So you and Dad got divorced when I was 6. You moved to Baton Rouge, joined the Army Reserve in Baton Rouge, right?
San Antonio.
San Antonio first.
Yeah, but then I had to switch units. You're right, because that's when I got a civilian job.
Right, your
Job.
federal job in Baton Rouge, right?
Yeah, we went to Miami first, and then they called me for a job interview in Baton Rouge. And I told them, they asked me, would you come to an interview in Baton Rouge? And my answer was, if you're going to tell me that you're going to hire me, yeah, I'll come to Baton Rouge.
So, Mama, small town girl, you was a little cocky, right?
The truth
That's
is,
the second thing you said.
I had
if you do this.
I had 2 small kids. I didn't have time to be running from Miami to Baton Rouge for them. You have to be smart. When people call you in for an interview, they've already looked at your record and pretty much decided if you would be a good fit. All they're doing is doing a meet and greet.
Mm-hmm.
See how you look.
Mm-hmm.
Want me to send you a picture? And guess who that was? Major General Phillips now. That's who I was talking to.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
So he must have liked you from the start. I go, she's a little spunky.
Because he was in my too. So, just like being gifted people recognize gifted people,
Mm-hmm.
So he just, yeah.
Okay, so I guess my question was, having 2 little kids when you were in the, you had your civilian status, but you was also Army Reserves, did your drill on the weekend, right?
Yes.
Let me know if I'm saying anything incorrectly.
Actually, in San Antonio, I had to go every Thursday night for 4 hours instead of the weekend, which was
that's
cool.
A thing.
Yeah, I mean, units and stuff drill at different time. I went once a week for 4 hours on Thursday night. Think about it. Your daddy worked, so when I had to go to drill, he would be home. The only time we had a weekend, we may have had 1, maybe 2 weekend drill throughout the year, and that would have been, they call it a muster when they do 100% accountability of your equipment, you and all that. Other than that, I drove from Lackland side of San Antonio to, what was on the other side?
Did it start with an S? I can't think of it.
No, well, the base was Fort Sam Houston.
Fort Sam Houston. Yeah, I knew it started with an S.
It was a good 30 minutes if it was no traffic at night,
right.
But it was longer than that if you didn't hit the traffic right. If you had to go in the mornings.
Yeah, San Antonio was a beautiful place to live. It just have so much to do, and we enjoyed, living in San Antonio. We did. Okay, so I want to talk about your jobs. Like, tell me about all your military jobs, because I feel like you've had many careers in one career. So you did Morse code, of course, and then when you on your civilian side, tell us about that. You were an administrator, right?
Okay, so let me do military, then I do civilian. Yeah. Military, I was Morse code interceptor, which is really it's a language.
Right.
It's just Morse code. And then when I joined what did I say? I joined the Army Reserve?
In Texas?
I joined in Hawaii because I worked.
Okay.
I worked for the 25th Infantry Division on 2 different 6-month tours. And that's when I became, they call them 71 Lima back then, but an administrator.
Okay.
Type the letters, office type person. And then, of course, I carried that over to San Antonio when I found a new unit. Then after that, when I moved to Baton Rouge, of course, I was still Morse code, but we weren't doing much of that. because it's Cold War time, right? We just, whatever. I became a civilian employee, and I was in one of the reserve units. And then when I got straight and was in 100% 1190th, that's the unit they were transportation coordinators, which after that I became a warrant officer, transporter.
And back to when you were still on the soldier side, before you became a warrant officer, doing Desert Storm, you had to go to Germany and do and facilitate the transportation from Germany over, right, overseas.
Yeah, so that was the second time. Yeah, I had been to Germany. I just hadn't been to Paris.
Yeah, so you've been to Germany a couple of times. Yeah. Okay, cool. Anything else you want to add?
Okay, on the civilian side, I became a civilian employee in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, which, one part was civilian, the other part was you had to be a member of their reserve unit. And so that's why I was in both. But then I did, skipping forward, I did 7 deployments. I volunteered for in Guatemala. And then I went to Kuwait, 3 or 4 times. Germany was my last one. Seemed like I went somewhere else, but don't remember. But I did 27 years on the federal side, and I retired as a GS-12 supervisor, staff administrator, which was the commander of the brigade representative. And then on the military side, I retired Chief Warrant Officer 4.
And can you tell us the significance of that and how hard it is to become a Chief Warrant Officer 4?
You got to get through the school. When I first went to Warrant Officer school, getting ready for it, I had never did a correct push-up in my life. I had been in the military for a while, but push-ups, I could do sit-ups all day. I could run all day, but not push-up. When I was getting ready for that, someone told me, if you don't pass the initial physical fitness test, they'll send you home. So I started doing push-up in all kinds of positions and strengthen that. So I get there a week early because they allowed that. And they had the practice platoon where you go through the emotion, but it ain't the real thing. And we doing a 3-mile run. And I'm running, and my knee jump out of place. And the drill sergeant said, if you don't, not the drill sergeant, TAC officer, if you don't keep running, I'm going to make everybody else run another 3 miles. So I kept running on it. And that set the pace for me. From that day to the end of my training, my knee, I was in crucial pain. But my TAC officer, once I got in the real platoon, he actually obtained a knee brace for me, and that helped me. But every morning when I got up, I didn't know if I was going to be able to get up because that's how much pain I was in. You don't remember when you and Kayla and Joy?
No, I do remember. I couldn't
even drive the next day.
No, I do remember, and that should have automatically gave you disability right there because he made you run on a bum knee.
The thing is,
you should have not.
The thing is, it's kind of like with the basketball players. I had to run and I had to do everything on that. I was in pain. And you know how we had to make our bed up a certain way. A quarter had to pop off it. Well, most people would just barely move their cover and sleep in one spot. I had to stretch my leg out.
Right.
I mean, I'm getting up, trying to make up a bed. But I'm going to tell you something. It is, if you want it bad enough, and my TAC officer say, candidate McCullum. I was McCullum. He said, if something happened and you have to go to the doctor and you out 24 hours, you get recycled. You don't get adjustment for that, right? He was like, I'll make sure you come back and you only have to do 2 weeks. I looked at my TAC officer. I said, sir, I'm going to do it once or not at all. Because if I had got sent home, I wasn't going back. Long story short, 2 guys from my unit that went to Warrant Officer school and got sent home. And so anyway, I made it through. And when I got back, everybody was ready to just dump on them Julie made, because the whole time I'm getting ready, how you going to make it if Rick didn't make it? He got all those muscles, this and that. And I used to look at them and say, I'm not him. I'm going to make it. And I had met this female one officer in New Orleans. She was my mentor. You know, I'm like, don't tell me what I can't do. So when I came back, they was ready to dump on them. You know what I did? I said, don't do that. Because nobody knows what pain.
Mm-hmm.
When I say painful, it broke me down. It broke me down, and it told me, you don't dump on them, because if they were in as much pain as I was, that is why. And then I found out at graduation, I wasn't the only one in pain. It just felt like it.
Mm-hmm.
It was that painful.
Yeah.
The running on concrete do a toll on your knees big time.
So I don't think you answered my question about Chief Warrant Officer Ford. Like, you were one of the first Black, isn't that a big deal? To elaborate on that.
Being
a woman, period.
Being a female, even until I retired, soldiers would come up to me and they would be, wow, I'm so impressed. You're a female and you're a Chief Warrant Officer 4.
Yeah.
So impressive to look on us. You know what I tell them? I ain't nobody.
Well,
I'm just out here working with you. I kept it humble.
You were humble, yeah.
Yeah.
Just being your daughter and I looked up to you, of course, as your daughter, but very impressed on, how far you went in the military and how hard you work. And I always saw that dedication and hard work. And, I'm proud of you, and I've always been proud of you and the things you accomplished. Because you accomplished a lot, and you did it pretty much all on your own. And of course, with God help, but you did it.
But Tanya,
and I'm sure when you first joined the military at 18, you had no idea.
Didn't have a clue
how far you would get.
But Tanya, I am proud of you and your brother. Look what you have accomplished. And you did it all by yourself. Well, I had nothing to do with it.
You helped.
No.
You were a very supportive mother. And your parents and your grandparents were supportive as much as they could, but you went the extra mile to help Harry and I. So
I'm saying you can drink, what the old folks say, you can take a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. Do that make sense to you?
I think the difference is you didn't have anything to fall back on. And if we fell, we had something to fall back on. We knew that we had you, and we knew that we would be okay no matter what. But just watching you and Dad and how hard you guys worked kind of taught us that, hey, we need to be at that level or higher. I always like the one thing that stuck with me, you always used to say, always work 110%. So that way when you are slacking, you're still at 100. So no one knows that you're slacking. You may feel like you're slacking. I feel like I'm very hard on myself. Like I feel like, I could do more, I could do better. But I actually do a great job at work, and of course I can do a little bit better, but you taught me that you do 110%. So even when you're slacking, it still looks like you're doing better than everybody else.
That's right.
Or at least just as well.
That's right. On a bad day. You're still better than the rest.
That's the one thing that sticks out with like advice that you have given me. But before we wrap this up, I feel like you had a very successful career, even though you probably didn't dream of it when you was a little girl. But wow, the places you went, the things you have done, and now you're retired and you're still doing big things. You got your master's, and I don't think we ever we celebrated it, but I don't think we really mentioned it on a podcast in detail.
We did, eventually.
We did, didn't we? But yeah. I'm so proud of, you initially when you were going to get your master's, I'm like, you're retired. Why are you trying to finish your master's? And you did that, and I'm very proud of you.
Because you finished what you started.
Yes. And my kids can never have said, oh, well, you didn't go to college, so I'm not going. But it's ingrained in them. And even William says, well, he would have went to college no matter what. But he made the comment, I'm only doing this because you was going to make me go anyway. But he's only been in college technically a year, started last summer in college, and he's doing summer classes this year. He's already a freaking junior. So very impressed. with him. And so anyway, before we wrap this up, I just wanted to like briefly tell about my 4-year military Air Force
I was going
career.
to ask you because I'm very proud of you. But let me ask you this: do you remember what I said when you called me? Because you was in Baton Rouge and I was in Kansas, and you said, "Mom, I want to join the Air Force." What was my answer?
Oh, you said you can. No, you said the military. Did I say the Air Force specifically?
You said the Air Force.
You said, well, you would rather me join the Air Force because they treat their people better than the Army. Is that what you're talking about?
Well, yeah, that's one of the things. But I remember saying to you, "You're not going reserve. If you go Air Force, you got to go
Oh,
active duty Air Force."
why was that? I don't remember that now.
Yeah.
But why was that?
I wasn't going to have you playing Air Force. You either go do 4 years or don't do it at all because you were underage and you needed my signature.
Okay, so quick story. You know, I graduated technically number 4, but I say number 3 because that's what was on my graduation thing. Darius rolling his eyes at me, but yeah. So I was supposed to be technically number 3, and I got
it was supposed to be 2.
Number 3, and I got in an accident, and then I missed some school, so went down to number 4. But they already did the program, so it was number 3. But anyway, my senior year of high school, Mom moved back to Kansas, and I wanted to stay in Baton Rouge, and so I did have her voice in my ear saying, you know, apply for scholarships, apply for colleges, and her not being there, and my godmother, her name was Kayla, was very ill and sick, and I was helping taking care of her, and my little god sister, who was 5 years old at the time and going to school and working, you know, Mom was saying, you know, do your applications. And I would tell her, yes, I was doing them, but I really didn't do it. So when it became time to make a decision and people start asking me, oh, what are you going to do with your life? I said the military, thinking that I had time to figure it out. Well, the time came, and luckily I did junior ROTC in high school. So when I went into the military, I was an E3 already, or was it an E2? Maybe E2. And so I already went in with some ranks, so that was important. That was guidance from mother, you know, really I did junior ROTC in high school, so I wouldn't have to have PE, but it was worth it. But quickly, you know, I decided to join the Air Force. I went to what it was called MEPS. Is that what it's called, MEPS?
Yeah.
And I knew I wanted to be in the medical field. And I went through all of my, you know, evals and training or tests or whatever. And they said, well, you need to join Open General. And I said, no, I want to join medical. And they said, well, we don't have a medical job at this time. So I don't know if I called you first or Dad
first. You called
first.
me. Oh, yeah.
I'm not sure which one, but you guys said, well, tell them what you want. And if that's not what you want, you wait. And so I went back in there and I said, you know what? I'll wait for a medical job. I'm not going Open General. So I consulted my advisors, went back in there, and then they said, well, the next medical job is not for 9 months. And at this point, I was still 17, so I had to get approval from, you know, have a parent sign off on it. I was like, well, I'll wait I think it was 9 months. So I did. I waited 9 months, and in the meantime, I worked at Wendy's, and then I was a paraeducator at an elementary school. So when the time came in March of 2000 for me to really go, I was like, I don't want to go. Mom was like, you're going because you're not going to.
I swore you in, remember?
That was pretty cool because Mom was an officer, so she got to swear me in, and there's a picture of this to prove it. So it was pretty cool. So anyway, my basic training was in San Antonio at Lackland Air Force Base. And, you know, I already told you about when I got off the plane, and, you know, the sergeants like running in your face and, you know, yelling at you and blah, blah, blah. I knew going in that it was a mental game, and that like maybe you told me like to just, you know, be quiet, listen, and do whatever they tell you. And that's exactly what I did. Like you said, they try to break you down, but it's more mentally, I think, than even physically. And so I just knew from the beginning, just, you know, just be cool, calm, and collected. And I was, and I got through it. And even when I didn't think I was going to get through it, because my thing was the running part, I'm like, I still don't see the point of running. Why? Mom was on a track team, so that was not her downfall. It was the push-ups. For me, it was the running. But, you know, I got through it. And, you know, I was very proud of myself when I got through basic training. Then I went to Shepherd Air Force Base, which is also in Texas, and then I was stationed in Vegas. But
You went to Travers first. Why were you in Travers? That was
no, first I went to Shepherd Air Force Base and did my medical training. Then I went to Travis Air Force Base for actual my clinicals, like working in the hospital
okay.
as a medical assistant, medical technician.
Okay.
And then from
Station.
there, they said, where do you want to, so let me back up. My recruiter was like, oh, yeah, wherever you want to go, most likely that's where you're going to get. You get choices of where you want to be stationed. And he was stationed in some island. I can't think of the island name. So I put that down. I put Germany. For some reason, I wanted to be stationed overseas, my first base, because I thought that would be so cool to be overseas because growing up, we traveled a lot in the States. And so I thought it would be cool to go overseas. I get called in a room and he says, you're getting stationed in Nellis Air Force Base. So I'm like, where is that? And he was like, in Vegas. And I'm like, why? He was like, most people would be excited to be in Vegas. And I'm like, well, that wasn't one of my choices,
Well, everybody in the family was happy that you were stationed in Vegas.
I mean, that's where Kayla was born. So it turned out to be a beautiful place to stay. And
Everybody visit you?
That is true, Grandma. and Daphne, you and Terry, of course. And a lot of family did come
Grandma
and visit.
Shirley, yeah.
Mm-hmm. That is true, but I was like, what happened to Florida? Because I grew up in Louisiana, so I wanted, if I was going to be in the States, it would have been Florida. Florida has like or they did have like 5 Air Force bases or military bases, and I got Vegas. But it turned out to be a beautiful thing, and, I worked in a pediatric clinic for 2 years as a medical assistant, and then I worked on a med-surg unit. And that's when I realized I wanted to be a nurse, because I'm like, these nurses, to me, looking back, I thought those nurses were lazy. They was just sitting there charting and we were doing all the work. And I'm like, hey, that's pretty smart actually to have someone else to do all the physical labor while, we're in there changing the patients, giving them the baths, changing the bedpans and all that, the sheets and doing all the hard work when all they was doing is charting. But now I realize, no, nursing is freaking hard work, And if you're a great nurse, if you're a good nurse, you're actually in there helping your CNAs, your nursing assistants in doing their task if they need help, if the patient needs help. But just looking back in that age, I'm like, I could be a nurse. And so that's when I decided to get out of the military and go to nursing school. And that was like the best decision and hardest decision I think I've ever made, because nursing school was no joke. So,
and you have to admit, I was begging you to get out the military.
Well, the reason why I got out, 9/11 happened. I had my daughter, and
Terry was waiting to be the one to take care of Kayla too, so that wasn't the issue.
Well, I knew I didn't want to be away from her. And so after my 4 years was up and I wanted to renew and I wanted to be closer to you, actually, closer to Louisiana, and they wouldn't transfer me bases. And then it was still a high chance of me being deployed somewhere and, not being with Kayla. I decided to just get out and go to nursing school. And Dad said that I would regret it. I didn't regret it. Maybe for a split second, maybe 4 or 5 years down the road, maybe I thought about maybe I should have stayed in, because I could have retired in the military by now and have done something else. But no, I mean, I think once you make a decision in life and you stick with it, you just got to keep it moving. And I didn't regret it. I enjoyed my time in the military. I guess that was like kind of my college experience because I was in the dorms. I had fun with my, people that I went to in the military with. But when I got out and went to nursing school, I was a mom and I went to school. I came home. And so I don't regret it. And we're a military family, have a lot of family in the military. So it was a good experience, but it wasn't my career path like it was yours, But it led me, the GI Bill paid for nursing school, or at least help pay for nursing school, part of it. And so that was a blessing. So, yeah. Anything else you want to add about the military?
No, this year, October 31, 2025, will be 5 years that I've been retired. And no, I don't miss it. I love being in retirement. This part of my life I was made for. Sometimes I wake up and I can't believe how blessed I am to be able to be totally retired.
That is a blessing because
It
a lot of
is.
people
Have to get another job.
I work with are like in their 70s. There's a lady that's 80 and she's still working. She's by choice, but some people don't have a choice and still have to work in their 70s and 80s. And so that is a blessing.
I mean, I work cleaning this house or
Gardening.
or puzzling.
Yeah. But it's your choice.
My choice.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, we talked enough about the military and federal service because you are now state employees. So we still part of the government.
We are.
Yeah.
All right. So that's our podcast for today, guys. Thank you for listening to our military journey, and just wanted to give you a little bit more background on Mom's journey because I think it was very fascinating and had a long, successful career. And, you know, she's retired. I'm not, but hey.
You want to be.
I want to be. Dad said, Terry Sr. said, I don't know. I think I talked to him and I was like, I want to be rich. And he was like, no, it's good that you're not rich because he knew. Well, I think God knows that the reason why I'm not rich is because if I was rich, I wouldn't work. And Dad said, you need to work. You know, he was like, you need to work. Like working gives you a purpose in life. And I'm like, no, I don't need that purpose in life. My purpose in life could be watching TV or, you know, focusing on I know Terry Jr. is shaking his head again at me, but, you know, my purpose can be doing what I want to do. Like, you know, focus on my fitness and exercising. The doctor want me to exercise, but how can I exercise if I'm working all day and I'm tired?
You work it into your schedule.
But anyway, that's enough of my rant. But thank you for joining us for another episode of Enter the Minds of Nadine and Vera podcast.
It's been fun.
I love you.
I love you too, LaTanya.
I love you too, Julie. All right. Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.